I'd like to call to order this March 10th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Mr. Anagnostou, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Kilbane?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stochek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausen?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is our district goals. Our district goals remain academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And since we are here at Polaris Career Center, I thought I would share our highlight would be financial prudence, but we would highlight some financial prudence of our partner, Polaris Career Center. And back in January, Moody's did a reevaluation of Polaris and assigned a AA3 to Polaris Career Center Ohio's refunding of COPS. And reading from the press release, the issuer rating reflects the district's ability to repay debt and debt-like obligations. Following the sale, where did it go? I apologize. The rationale, the rating reflects the vocational school district's sound economic fundamentals supported by its broad suburban tax base in Northeast Ohio. It's a rating of AA1 stable with slightly above average resident incomes. Additionally factored into the rating is the district's consistent operating performance and maintenance of healthy operating fund balance and liquidity, along with its greater flexibility to adjust expenditure levels relative to traditional K-12 public school districts. But I think it's always important when an outside agency comes in and looks at us. Being from Strongsville, we're well aware that the mayor always touts the AA superior rating from Moody's, and I know George is always proud when we're able to have a similar high performance rating, and we should be proud that our partners at Polaris have a similar focus on financial prudence to the community. So congratulations to Polaris and through them to us. Next is public comment. I have no slips. There is a big crowd in the public. Does anyone want to address us? Hearing none, I turn it over to Dr. Ryba for superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. Before we get going with the presentation, I'd like to ask the superintendent of Polaris Career Center, Bob Timmons, to come to the podium to share some information, some news with the board.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to Polaris Career Center. It's always a special treat when we can open our doors to especially our associate school boards to be able to come in and see a little bit of what happens inside of our district, showcasing some of the things the great students are doing here, not only here from Strongsville, but also from our other consortium districts. Tonight you are in our new what we call Savor restaurant. You can see the large sign on the side. It is our student-run restaurant, which is part of a new operation where we renovated our facility beginning in 2016. So at that time was the first time we had a levy since 1980, and Mr. Miko was our president at that time, and not only helped us lead through that process of going for a levy twice, but then also directly into a renovation project. And you are seeing the results of $60 million of equipment and changes in facility. And the whole focus at that time, the reason for that levy was so that we would, as Richard often said, have a greater return on our investment. What's the return on investment for Strongsville City Schools as well as our other compact districts? So part of that return on investment is showing up that finally we are out of COVID, we're back to a normal format, and for the first time in the history of our district, we are completely full next year for our incoming classes. So that is a great kudos that was the whole intent. We wanted to make sure that we could open our doors to even more students. Mr. Miko resigned from our board in June of 2020. Over 6 years of service, much of that as our president also. So typically, we like to thank board members at a dinner that we hold yearly, but that hasn't happened because of the pandemic. So we didn't want to let this go on any further. So on behalf of our Board of Education, Mrs. Bissell has something to present to Mr. Micko.
By word and deed, your presence has enriched the lives of students and served as an example to all. It's honoring your years of dedicated service to Polaris Board of Education.
Although it is a small token, it really, as you know, for those of you that serve on the Board of Education, it's a lot of work outside of your typical day. And when you serve on 2 boards, it's even magnified beyond that. So thank you, Richard, very much for your service and your help. And Mrs. Bissell, thank you again.
Well, I'm a little bit caught off guard, as I think George knows the feeling, but it's a really nice feeling, and I appreciate the sentiment. And whenever you get a chance to see the results of that construction project, you can't help but be proud and happy about it. And it's great to hear that the enrollment is 110%. That's a good problem to have. So thank you again. Dr. Ryba.
At this time, we're going to ask Jessica Frenchick, our instructional integration specialist, to come up to the podium. Board members, you have the slides in front of you. We'll have the slides on the screen in the back of the room. But as we've done throughout this school year, we've highlighted some of our new positions and the return on investment they are having in terms of teacher capacity building and student achievement. So Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of give an update as to what's been going on this year with your new role.
All right, sounds good. Is it on up there, or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
use it from here? Oh,
It's just a blank slide. It's okay at the
oh,
next
just
one.
go. You're so good. All right, so like Dr. Ryba said, I'm Jessica Frenchick. I've worked in the district this is my 15th year in the district. Career tech has been my passion since I've been working at Strongsville City Schools, so it's kind of ironic that we're here tonight at Polaris Career Center for my presentation. So just a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a Strongsville graduate. I graduated in 2000, and I've been working in the district for about, this is like my 15th year, and I previously was involved with the Marketing DECA program up until recently, where I've been working in more of a technology role. So I was previously teaching some tech classes, and then last year I had the opportunity to move into this position for this school year. So I've been for the past 3 years serving on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Trustees, and this year I'm currently serving as the Vice President of the Strongsville Chamber of Commerce additionally. So just a little bit about me. So when we created this position, we had a vision that what I could do within the district from the things I was working on specifically at the high school, and how we could put this position from pre-K all the way through 12 to work on 3 focus areas. So the 3 areas of focus that I've been working on for this year, for year 1, is working for our PBL, so our project-based learning, providing students a more authentic learning experience, makerspace integration, and working on our Model Mustang integration. So how are we doing this? We're doing this through the professional development that we've had as a district this school year, with very targeted professional development, working on technology integration, and coaching and committee different projects. So I've been working directly with Jenny most of the time, which has been absolutely amazing. She's a fantastic mentor for me and a strong role model for the things that I have been working on in the district. And then additionally, I also get to work with Dave and Aaron and Lauren with the Gifted and Talented. So it's nice to be able to be involved in multiple facets of things that we do here as a district. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the ongoing professional development. So taking these things that we do from theory and putting it into practice. So one of the biggest pushes this year is we've had very well thought out and planned PD by the directors in our district this year. So with my position, after the PD or while the PD is occurring, sometimes I'm involved in the details of the PD, sometimes I'm directly involved in just the planning or the overseeing of it. So we're able to take this targeted PD and then provide the follow-up support to our teachers that need it after the PD has occurred. So which is something new that we're able to do with the position that I have. So this year we spent a lot of time on this, unpacking the standards and really focusing in on what our standards are so that we know that we're teaching the level that we need to our students, and that our formative assessments, our quick checks here and there to see what they know before they take the final summative assessment where the learning technically ends for that unit, that we're doing a really good job at that. So the future of this would be turning this into lesson design. So I've been involved in training our TBT coaches, our team-based team coaches, who help and support the TBTs that meet within our buildings, and then further support with the BLT. We're working to teach to the rigor, as I stated, with the standards that we have, and making sure that we're designing lessons with a UDL framework when we begin lesson design. So all of us are in a little bit of a different place right now with the courses we teach. So I'll talk a little bit more about UDL as we go through this presentation. So another thing that has been cool that we worked on this year is that we're starting a new coding class at the middle school. And I did a grant a few years ago through Amazon, and now it's called Project STEM. And so Project STEM does our AP curriculum for AP Java at the high school, AP Principles, and also an introductory course that's just Python programming language. So we want to be able to integrate these because our computer science standards are K through 12. And Ohio just adopted them in 2019. So I was on the standards writing team for the state of Ohio for these standards. And so a lot of the teachers that are in our district right now have not had any formal training on how to implement these standards into their classrooms. So especially with everything that's happened since 2019, we certainly haven't been having the time to implement computer science standards into our classrooms. So this course that we are going to introduce to the 8th graders at the middle school has the potential of growth into our high school programs. Additionally, it has potential to grow for 2 other courses. So if it works really well and we gain the interest and we have the staffing for it, we could potentially teach a different level course at the 7th grade and then at the 6th grade, bringing it down so that our students have this opportunity to be involved in one of the growing largest fields that students are going into after they graduate. I was just on a webinar last week and they were talking about how Ashland's starting a 5G program. So just for graduates to go into 5G, because as we've said for years, we are truly preparing our students for careers that are not really developed yet or what they're going to be working on. So as the district that we are, we need to be able to provide our students with this competitive advantage in these career fields. Any questions before we move on? Anything? Okay, good. All right, so about the professional development, and focusing on this Universal Design for Learning, UDL, as we talk about. This year, Jenny and I visited every school's building leadership team, their BLT meetings. And the first round was just very informative. We did a reboot, like what does this mean? Let's refresh ourselves and get started in this. And how does it relate to the standards work that we're currently working on, which is our big push this year? So then we took the feedback. We asked all the teachers to tell us what a problem of practice you have is. What's the barrier for moving on in Universal Design for Learning? So the second round we came through and they had reflected on their problem of practice. They talked to Jenny and I about what that looks like for them, what barriers they have, and what resources can we provide for them. So this third round, which we just started this week of going to all the buildings, we were able to put together a presentation that had the examples that were grade level specific, course specific, that teachers were looking for. So that they could model what we're asking for them to do. So UDL is our first best instruction. It is the best way that we can reach our learners in the very beginning of the way that we teach. So at this point, though, we're just at more of an exposure level. So once our standards are deconstructed and our teachers know what assessments they're going to have, we have to build the lessons to support those. So that's where we'll be working on this next year. So right now we have a lot of idea generation. We want teachers to know what that looks like. We have a lot of teachers that are willing to give it a try right now. Every week Jenny shares out this UDL connection, which helps inspire teachers, show them and guide them of what it could look like in your classroom. And we have a lot of teachers that submit things that they're working on to be models for other teachers. So, and I am able to then give her feedback too from what I hear in buildings of what we need resource-wise for that.
And as you catch your breath for a second, the one thing I would say that we've designed with these positions is Jessica is still teaching in the classroom. So I think that's one of the powerful things is she still has a class every day. She's putting these things into practice. She's able to see what works, what doesn't, and have that meaningful conversation that a teacher to a teacher could have a little differently than an administrator to a teacher could have.
You stole my next slide.
Sorry.
It's okay. This year, one of our largest focuses with teacher makerspace training has been working in the elementary schools. So the elementary schools have lost their makerspace spaces. So we're in working with Dave and Lauren and Amy Pinney and putting together some standard-based things, which I'll show you on the next slide, for our makerspace, for our youngest learners, for them to be able to experience what that is. So I'll show you on the next slide. So also working with the technology is our middle school keyboarding program in 6th grade. So when I first started at the high school, we had keyboarding at the high school level. We realized students needed that earlier. So we've moved that course now down to the middle school, and now working through with other teachers, we've realized that students actually need not only the keyboarding piece, but they need to learn that tech piece a little bit sooner too. So like, for example, I was working with an 8th grade social studies class, and students were working on building different colonies and what that would look like if they created their own. And they were trying to build these websites, but they didn't have the skills in the background to build the website. So the goal of the lesson was to learn about the colonies, but they also needed that tech background. So if we can start some of this stuff just a little bit earlier and still give them the skills that they need, we're able to produce these higher level thinking projects that we want our students to do. So that's something that Dave and I are working on together for that. So, and then additionally, like as Cameron had mentioned, I am still teaching a class, which is very important. It's also very important to my colleagues for them to know that I'm also in this with them, of the things that we're, initiatives or things that we're working on and doing, that I'm able to take some of these strategies, try them first, find out what doesn't work, how many times do I have to try it until it does work, and it helps with the process that we're all going through. Okay.
What class are you teaching?
I'm currently teaching Intro to Python this semester. So last semester I did just a general business technology class, which was just an extension, I guess, if the 8th grade tech class went to another level. So putting all the programs and such together. So, okay, so as I mentioned, makerspace in the elementary school, we came up with these innovation stations, and this truly was a group effort. They are aligned to standards, so we're using the equipment and the tools in the makerspace to educate our students differently. So this was a very collaborative process. It was the solution to the loss of space. It is still providing students with this opportunity. And it's important because we're able to take the carts to the school, and without the position that I have, we don't have the manpower to go and implement the carts. So we've all been in the buildings showing the teachers what the carts are and going through, but then now as everyone else has dispersed back to their positions, I can contact the teachers and follow up and implement the carts within their classroom. So it's worked really well on a modeling system because they don't know how to use the tech yet. So I can do station rotation and model and show them how to use the tech, and then they're able to teach their colleagues. Then they're able to take this learning and move it forward. So I did 4 2nd grade classrooms last week, and now I'm able to say, like, okay, we learned how to use the Ozobots. I taught your students 6 different codes on them. So here are some 2nd grade lessons that you can use to take this from just your win time or your IE time, but use it within your classroom, fulfilling the computer science standards, but then also using the technology that we thankfully have as a district. So we can introduce the carts, I can facilitate, and then we can help grow. So our next step in this is to change up the theme of the cart we currently have. So we went with this Design a Toy Challenge, and I have a couple pictures and such that teachers have shared with me or I've taken within their classrooms. So we have a couple other ideas in mind as we kind of grow and change this. So this has been really exciting for the elementary school kids. They cheer for you when you show up. Mm-hmm. So any questions on that? I'm going to go through a couple pictures about it, so if you have anything. So I'll start up at the top. We're using the 3D pens here. So students have to learn how to use the pen. There's a variety of challenges that are within there, and talking about taking things and taking them from 2D and making them into 3D and what that looks like. The Ozobots concept of coding with color So we made maps, and then they directly copied the map, and then by the time I was able to leave, they were able to make their own maps. So they understood how to make it go from point A to point B. Then there's a fun little, the 3D pen is not as easy as it looks. It's actually a little quite challenging. So he was trying to make it grow up, but how do you make it grow up? You have to learn how to make the level. So it was just, he had fun failing on the project, so it was pretty cool. And then the papers on the right, we grade banded them, so they were like K1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. So there was something for everybody, and then an extension project within that. So students had two options. They could create a new toy with the materials on the Makerspace cart, or they could take a toy that they already have and then make improvements upon it. So this was, some students really enjoyed this project too. And then there was another project that they did a really nice job with too. It was like taking a cube, which was a 2D, just a flat shape, and they designed each one, and then they had to learn how to fold it and make it into like a box. So it was very neat, the designs and such that they came up with. So the neat thing about this too is that teachers who were nervous, who might never have used this technology, felt very comfortable using it. And then also, since the students know how to use it, I heard multiple teachers say, well, now you can teach so-and-so how to use it the next time they come back. So it's really a growth experience where it's not something that has to be where I'm there and that's the only way it's going to use. So we're providing this opportunity for teachers to feel comfortable using the technology that we have available to them, where it can just be, then my role the next time I come in is maybe helping with a curriculum piece, showing a new project that you can do or modeling that for them. So how can we measure it? By the growth that we can build from nobody really using them, brand new carts, and then moving it around and seeing what type of response that we have from there. Okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you say moving it around, does each elementary school have their own cart? Or
Yes.
But they're all the same? Like the
Very
bands?
similar, but Dave did a nice job doing inventory of what all the schools have. So some of the schools that had things that didn't have, you were purchasing and kind of working on.
So every school got the same theme. Their tech challenges they all have the same basic tech challenges. There are a couple that, due to inventory or ones they bought for their own building, we incorporated those more because the teachers and students were familiar with them from being in the makerspace previously. And then the little craft pieces on the cart that were help designing the toys, we used what was in inventory, but the actual activities going along with that is consistent between all of them.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
So every elementary building has 3 carts,
one cart per building.
1 cart per building.
Yes.
But the lesson is banded between a K1
Yes.
lesson, a 2-3 lesson, a 4-5, I gotcha.
So there's lots of choice on the cart of what kids can do. So for kids who want to do the tech, try the tech out. For kids who prefer to do something a little bit more on the creative side with the crafting, but also it's standards-based and a growth point for them. Good? Okay. So the other part of what I've been working on this year is how does STEM plus UDL plus PBL provides a deeper learning experience for our students. So we had this summer, I was a part of putting together a training. We had 32 new teachers trained in a 1-day PD training. So when I was trained on project-based learning, we had a 3-day training. So because of my training I had with PBL, we felt comfortable doing a 1-day training. Due to COVID, that's how it had to be virtual. So we couldn't do a 3-day training. We all thought 3 days virtual online with a training was like a terrible idea. So this 1-day training, then the next day I was able to pull a team of teachers who also were trained in PBL and put on a training for a cohort of the people who were trained previously, plus the people who were trained the day before. So we did 1 day of 32 new teachers, and then the next day we brought 50 teachers all in together for a combined cohort to put together a refresher and a build on the training that they had the day before. So, which was great because we have a lot of teachers who have been involved in different projects to share their expertise on this. So from there, what we're currently working on is now implementing those projects for those teachers and providing the support for them. So putting on a true PBL, not a project you do in your class, but a PBL that has the 7 gold standard steps, that involves the community, that involves this deeper learning, that is an experience that students will carry forward, is a lot of work. It's also very intimidating and there's a lot of unknowns. So teachers need the support to take the risk to do some of these larger projects. The next example I have up there is a neat project that happened in 5th grade where students typically do learn about landforms with workbooks. They learn about them with worksheets, and this teacher came up with this idea to have them learn about landforms by creating their own in Tinkercad. So when I went to visit, all the students were telling me all about their landforms, how they created it. So it definitely met the standard, and then we were able to take a couple of those and print those designs out for those students to make their model into a true 3D landform of what it would look like. So again, that's something that they'll carry forward. That's something that they remember beyond just the workbook pages and that type of thing. And this is the goal of what we're trying to do as a district. So the other idea on this side there, I worked with Lauren on in a gifted class with gingerbread houses and paper circuit lighting. So even though this was a gifted opportunity, it's important though that to be involved in this opportunity because I can take what we've done here, then I can scaffold it down for all of our learners. So trying it for the first time, seeing how it goes, and then seeing how we can move this to other areas for all students to experience a project like this. So this gingerbread house covered 5 different standards. They learned about the electrical design, how to put it together with the circuits, and the design process amongst it. So it was a nice learning experience for our students. Just a couple other ones that I wanted to feature today is this Ozobot STEM challenge that we did at Whitney. And, again, scaffolding this down from this wasn't a gifted classroom, but how can we scaffold this down to all of our learners, which we have done now with the Makerspace cards. So this was a starting spot. I did this one first, and then I was able to move into the regular classrooms with not the gifted population of students. So in this one, they had to solve math equations, and if they didn't solve them correctly, the code wouldn't work. So they had to go back through, and they had multiple samples, and then before they could get to their final project to work on. The middle example that I want to highlight tonight is a student that typically finishes work early. And so his teacher was having he had designed his own version of a Pokemon character. And so his teacher taught him how to use the 3D pen. So beyond that, then she contacted me and said, hey, he's still working on these characters, these figures that he created. Is there something that we can do for him? So I said, yeah, we can 3D print them. So he took all his designs he had on paper. She taught him how to use the program software. I was able to 3D print these for him, but then also through the design process, take them to him as a failed print and identify what we needed to do to fix it. So again, while this was just a learning experience for one kid, it's impactful for a teacher to know that they can reach out and that they can take one student's learning a little bit further, and then how we can translate this to other schools and other classrooms across the district. So it's just, a benefit of what we have right now. So he also then, pulled in a literacy component where he would write about them in class. So it was very encouraging to have such a motivated 3rd grader working on these cool STEM projects on his own time. And then the last example up there is from the high school marketing program. They covered 7 steps of a sale and the learning that took place when students had to create their own project. So we have these tall tables in the room. We got these maker tables, and all their book bags are all over the floor. It's dirty. So their teacher said, hey, here's a problem. I want you to create something to hang these book bags. So they had to do the measurements. They had to invest in talking about how would I make and create this product for someone to use. And then they sat in front of a panel of judges for their midterm exam and pitched their product ideas to a bunch of people who knew about what types of materials would you use, how many pounds will it use, how can we take this and sell it, and how what type of packaging will we put together with it. So it was a very hands-on real world experience and a different way to teach the 7 steps of a sale, which is very textbook based. And this is something that they made and create and then sold. So it's a very authentic learning experience. And then next year she can take this project and expand upon it to involve a different community aspect to it. So STEM, UDL, Choice and Voice, and our PBL projects does lead to deeper learning experiences for our students. Okay, all right. Guess what? Almost done. So where are we going with this in the future? I don't want to give too much away about the project up in the top because that's something you'll be invited to when they have the grand opening. It's a garden project, so growing the Mustang mindset. very catchy. So it's coming in May, but they're working with community partners again to provide students with this experience about how does gardening relate to taking care of yourself. So it's very SEL component to it for their social emotional learning. So I think May 13-ish, but don't write that down. Mr. Edmonds will reach out and invite everybody to the grand opening. They currently have a lot going on in that. So this year also, our AP Environmental Science teacher was trained over the summer, and she implemented this project-based learning within her class. And it's a struggle for students who are not exposed to this type of learning for them to have this new exposure. Our students, especially our AP students, are trained to, this is the material, this is what you do with it. And this new way of thinking about it has them having to come up with the answer that's not something you can Google. So it's very challenging, it's very relevant, and it's preparing them for what they're gonna do when they leave us at the high school. So it's a struggle to teach them in this way. So if this is something that we can implement younger on and keep our students with that excitement about learning and push it through all the way when we get to the high school, these types of things won't be as big of a challenge of keeping them engaged with trying to solve it. So she did a really neat project. It was on 60 Seconds with the superintendent, and had them come up with ways they had to have to make things more energy efficient at home. So they had to do an analysis of how much energy are you using at home and what could you do to improve it. So they never read an electrical bill. They never read their gas bill. They never had gone through those and what does that look like for them. So, and then they had to make a pitch of what you could do at home to improve on this bill, these bills that you had. So our AP government teacher agreed to also be trained in project-based learning over the summer, this coming summer. So that'll be a great experience for those students there too. Okay, and then we're working currently, this is what the projects kind of start like, with your essential question up at the top, and then the brainstorming that goes on about it. And those Post-it notes are all the feedback that were given at the training session. So now I just sat down with this teacher last week, actually this week, and working through these, how can we put this from this piece of paper into practice? And a lot goes into that. So she's currently working on aligning a book, the Holes book, if you've seen the movie, with this project that she's trying to put together. So, okay. Anything on PBL? Okay. So the instructional technology is another piece that I work on. And you know, with more of like the instruction first mindset, we have so many tech tools available to us, but tech is not typically the learning outcome unless you're teaching a tech class. So helping teachers find this to be accessible for which works best for them in their class. And it's not about using all 6 things I have up there, but it's about finding the best ones that eliminate barriers for your students in the classroom and which one fits for what you're teaching best. So we're very lucky to have many programs that we have the better level of subscription for here. So every month we work together with the tech coaches to put a collaborative tech tips together about what updates are occurring with these programs and keeping track of those things to share out with all of our staff and teachers about that. So we send one of those out every month and work on kind of organizing and putting that together for everybody. And again, it's very neat because I'm able to try these things in my class with my own students before I tell someone else it's a good idea to do for them. So, and work just to keep everybody updated. Okay, and then I'm very involved in a lot of committees here. I have been since I worked in the district, but I guess like what's important is that I'm able to see things at all different levels and then kind of connect and make those connections for our teachers on things that they might be struggling with. So provide alignment between the buildings. And like I said, sometimes I'm involved in the planning, sometimes I'm more in like the, working with the different groups to put PD on or plan it. But like this PD day, I'm working with the elementary teachers, but I'm able to kind of put that alignment of what's happening around the district everywhere and provide some voice and add value to these things that are occurring within our district. And then lastly, future work and goals. So this is only year 1. And next year we have a huge push with our PD to move into lesson design with our Model Mustang in mind. Continue working on these PBL projects with our teachers who may have not, a lot of teachers had plans to implement projects when we came back from break, but for a variety of reasons, we weren't able to do group work, we weren't able to put these on in the same way that we had to, so some of these had to pause until next school year, so we're prepared for that. and then continue the work with the makerspace to design these activities to reach all of our learners K through 12. So again, I guess like back from where we started from with the vision of where we're going and what we've done, we've accomplished a lot this year together. And I would say though that we've gone from small pockets of people, but we have a larger growth here and we have some momentum going. And I do think though that like once you have a successful experience working with one teacher, then 3 other classrooms contact me to come back in to work with them on what they're doing. So it's a nice way to grow this stuff that we're working on as a district and to make things accessible for everybody. So that's pretty much what I have for tonight. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
We
How do you
forward?
decide which classrooms to go to? Is it strictly teachers reaching out to you, or is there some other methodology?
So it's a little bit of that, but then also in communication with the building principal, they have recommendations of areas that could use some support and help too. So with the makerspace cards, we sent out emails to everybody, and some teachers reached out, and then after some teachers had the experience, then other teachers who were like, oh, hey, I heard about that. Like, can you come back? Can you show us this and put this on for our classrooms? So it's a little bit of both.
Thank you.
So, anybody else?
Couple of questions. One, you talked about how we recognized that we needed to do typing and applications sooner. When do we say we're pushing it too far down and they're not ready?
Well, they type in 3rd grade for the test, so I would say that 6th grade is a great place to really work on form and what is it, like ergonomics? Is that the word? Pretty big word. To work on that so that they can type effectively, like not like the hunt and peck type typing.
And I mean, I'd have to think how big a 6th grader's hands are.
Well, when I went to Strongsville City Schools, I learned in middle school.
Okay. I mean,
But yeah, it's a
sometimes
good
we
question.
push stuff down and
Right.
and they're just physically not ready to learn it.
Well, we
Typing may be
are
a bad
one-to-one
example, but-
everywhere but K and 1.
No, we're actually one-to-one.
We're one-to-one.
The only difference with our Chromebooks is kindergartens have touch screens as an option. They don't recognize all their letters yet. They can use ClassLink still to get into different programs. But we do purchase a program called Typing Agent that teachers can utilize during their IE time as well to help build the foundational skills of typing for even our youngest learners.
If the standards are still the same, I think it appears like in 2nd grade is the first grade where it says like some keyboarding skills. And years ago, we used to have learning.com, and part of learning.com was a keyboarding platform, and that's where we found that it was too young to push it at that level. And so, as Jessica said, even though they're using it on the test, it's not as cumbersome, and they're able to get by, but 6th grade was the spot where
Right.
we landed on.
So we have like a plan to do, like they're still going to learn all the keys with Fidelity, but then also just to incorporate an exposure to these other programs. So because they have to take 6th grade as mandatory, 7th and 8th is optional. So we want to make sure that if they don't choose a tech class for 7 and 8, that they've been exposed.
And who wants to do keyboarding for 9 weeks? I mean, that's a long time. Of course. That's a long time.
The second question is, you talked about how for a lot of the teachers, it was a change in mindset, especially with the project-based learning. What conversation do we need to have with parents? Because that mindset change is going to be just as much with parents. I mean, as a parent, I want to make sure, when you come home with homework, you do your spelling worksheet, you do your math worksheet, you read your book. Well, that doesn't work, we can't say, well, we could send Ozobots home with everyone and they'll never come back.
They might not, right?
But it is a different mindset, and then you said a number of times, we learn through failure, and that's a different mindset. So
Absolutely.
What do you have that parents need to be aware of?
So I think that as we start implementing our Model Mustang K through 12, working on that resiliency piece with our students and also with our teachers though, is when you plan lessons with UDL as your framework, you're through that process when you're preparing students for those mini failures along the way. So when you choose UDL as first best instruction and I have my unit and my lesson in mind, and then I teach that, then I give a formative check to see where is everybody at right now, then I'm able to say like, hey, like not yet, sort of, got it. And then I'm able to group students in that way. So I think for our students, once they're finding that success in this different way of reaching them and teaching them, is that I'm reteaching with this group, I've given an extension to this group, and I've wrapped around this group with some peer mentors or partners with them. So I think as though as we move as a district in this way, that parents will understand from a younger age on that it's not as when they come to high school and you take an AP class and you're like, are you teaching me for this AP test that I have that I paid $90 for? So, and that's part of that like growth and learning that I think that we all need to have. And that's where like the makerspace idea came from, is that we can't just Google everything. Like we have to learn how to do things again in a different way. So I would say though that as teachers do these project-based learning, that they do let parents know that this is what they're working on and this may be how it goes. And we have talks in the district. We have a grading committee to talk about some of our grading practices and how are we measuring results, like what's the difference between a 91 and a 93, and how are we allowing students to feel comfortable in those many failures they have along the way to build that resiliency. And some of that goes with grading, which is very important to a lot of students. So.
And then my last question, we talked about the next step, or a next step is building lessons and lesson design. Have we thought about how we're going to share that as a district?
That, I believe, is in next year's PD.
Okay.
So as we're working as a district. So this year we're doing, obviously like standards is our huge push this year, but as we go to the BLTs where you have your building leadership teams together and we're getting that feedback as this week as we're presenting these new ideas out to them. And again, we're gauging a measure of where everybody is so that we can meet our staff where they're at too. So the lesson design will be rolled out with a professional development that is attached to it.
And this is the geek in me coming out, have we thought about a repository, a library, whatever tool we're going to use to save and store and share these lessons? And if we haven't, that's something we can think about.
It is, definitely.
In anticipation of next year.
Yeah, definitely for our proprietary work. So.
2 + 2 still is 4.
Or 11 in binary. Okay, anything else? Good?
Thank you, Jessica, I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. You know, I've said this a lot throughout the last couple months, but I do want to once again thank the board for your vision and your foresight in seeing. I mean, this position really isn't in a whole lot of districts, and I think, you know, as Jessica wrapped up her comments at the end, we're making things accessible for teachers that otherwise, not because of a lack of want or desire to learn, but just the challenges and all that's going on in the daily work of a classroom, to have somebody come in and have the safety net of Jessica to model it, to be able to handle challenges that come up. I think you said, how many, you know, I've tried things in my classroom 2 or 3 times and have learned from that, and she could take that learning experience. And this is one of those things where, right, in school districts and companies at times we say, here's what we're doing, here's the directive, here's the initiative, everybody's going to do it and we're going to support you. For some of the things that we're doing now, it's how can we take advantage of interest of our staff to build these pockets of innovation that will then spread, because when Michelle, who works next to me, says, hey, you should check this out, this is really cool, it's easy, my kids were into it, that spreads down the hallway versus me or somebody else saying, you know, we're going to be an innovative district. It's a lot more meaningful coming from that kind of diffusion of innovation that way. So thank you for your work. I think we've had a phenomenal first year. We've got a good foundation for where we're going next year, and we're seeing some meaningful change. Moving on, we do have one item under Human Resources, a resignation be resolved upon my recommendation that the following non-certificated resignation be accepted. Maritza Condeni, MI Special Education Aide at the preschool, effective on March 15, 2022. The only reason it's a separate vote is because we have nothing else to vote on for this board agenda, so we do need a roll call vote.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Was that you?
Haley.
Was it Haley or Sharon?
Me. Sharon. Sharon. I'm sorry.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Other than who did the second?
Who's up first?
Hearing none, George, take the roll.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Ms. Stochek,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bissell.
Yes.
and the motion carries.
And
Next,
I was just going to say that concludes my report.
does anyone have any questions for Cameron? Next on our agenda is board bylaws and policies. We have a number of policies up for second reading. We, all of us have received the packet, and I know we're all reading it very closely, and we will vote on this at our next meeting. Board of Education Other, do we have any Board of Education Other? I just want to take the time to thank our partners at Polaris, especially Superintendent Timmons, for the welcome and for allowing us to have our meeting here. The pandemic kind of got in the way for doing this the last couple of years, but it's good to be able to explore and see what the entire district as a complete team has to offer. So it's good for us to see it, it's good for the public to see it, it's good for our students to be aware of it. We do have reason for executive session on the topics of
To consider the discipline or employment of a public employee, to consider the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee or student, to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by law.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Ms. Stovcek. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Ms. Stochek,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko.
Yes. We will enter into executive session at 7:50. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you for your attention and have a nice evening.